In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at compost to have an understanding of how the process works. How do we move from fallen leaves that are collected in our yard and across our property and transform that litter into black gold? Compost, that's the biologically stable soil amendment that we can use for our vegetable gardens, in our planter boxes, or across our landscape. What we have here are the ins and outs of composting, as characterized by the composting handbook. And as you recall, we want to balance our compost piles for its feedstock, which is the carbon material and the nitrogen material, or those greens and browns. Inevitably, there will be microorganisms that are recruited into the pile as we add all of that other feedstock. And then there's also things that go out of the compost pile during the process. As those microorganisms feed on the feedstock that you give them, they're going to release water vapor, they're going to release carbon dioxide and heat. Those are byproducts of respiration. Breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide. In some cases, they can give off odors and other gases, especially if you go a little bit too heavy with your green matter and there's too much nitrogen. It can volatilize and release as ammonia gas, which kind of has a pungent odor. But ultimately, if the process has been successful, you'll get that stable compost material, and you'll still have minerals that can be a fertilizer source for your plants, and there will be actively growing microbes in that compost. When we talk about balancing the feedstocks, generally a rule of thumb is to go approximately 3-to-1. 3-to-1 where you have 3 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, and that would be things like fresh grass clippings would be the green matter, that's a nitrogen-rich material, and then there's fallen leaves, wood chips, paper mulch, different things that can be your brown matter or your carbon source. And you want to mix that material up so that they have access to both the carbon material and the nitrogen material as they undergo their respiration and break down this feedstock to create compost. And this would be an example of what a pile looks like, where you add some food scraps into a large volume of brown matter. This is the best way to ensure we don't accidentally get too much green matter and kind of get that odor of ammonia gas. If you keep a large pile of leaves in your compost pile and bury your green matter in the center, the composting and activity will occur in the center of the pile, and you really won't experience many of those offensive gases as the composting process occurs. And what you'll notice here is we don't actually have entire leaves in our compost pile. And I mentioned that microbes feed on this. It's really important that we prepare our leaf litter by shredding it or breaking it up as much as possible. You can actually see a leaf shredder that I use on my property, where you can actually drop the leaves into the top of that cone, and inside there's wire cutter similar to a weed eater head that will shred up the leaves as they fall through and create like a loose confetti. That shredded up leaf material creates a lot more surface area for the microbes to feed on. And those shredded leaves break down much more quickly and hasten the composting process. So here would be an example of a zoomed in picture of the compost particles. And you can see that the compost particles are surrounded by microbes that are feeding on the surface of those particles. But around those particles, there's the ability for airflow to occur, and there's pore space so that air movement can come in. Oxygen can come in, carbon dioxide can leave, hot air can escape so that the pile doesn't get too hot, but there's still enough moisture to stick to those compost particles. And if we look at the overall process of composting, this is a graph that's pretty busy, so let me explain it. On your y-axis, going up and down, is the temperature of the compost pile, and then going from left to right are the days or the duration of time where the compost is aged for longer periods. You can see at the top, it starts off, it's not compost yet. It's actively breaking down. Then, after a period of time, it becomes immature compost. And then at the end, it's compost as it's maturing and getting more stable. So at the beginning, you actually have a spike in heat. The temperatures can reach 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That's called the thermophilic phase. Those microbes are growing and respiring and burning up that feedstock very aggressively. And after a period of time, that will become immature compost. It will have finished feeding, but there's still residual heat in the pile. And given more time, the compost will begin to mature. It will move from a thermophilic phase to a mesophilic phase, where it's no longer high heat. The temperatures drop, typically below 90 degrees would be an indicator that it's no longer active compost, it's a mature compost. And then it's suitable to use as a soil carbon amendment. And this is going to be something I talk about a little bit later in another video, the utility of your compost for different purposes and how to know whether you have a mature compost. But again, this is the process that occurs. You have a big spike in heat as those microbes are active. As the microbes have eaten everything that's available for them, the heat starts to drop off and the pile starts to stabilize. And when temperatures drop closer to ambient temperature, the temperature outside, that's when you have a mature compost. And so with that, I appreciate your time. I'd like to give credit to our sponsoring agencies and tune in for our next video.